So in effort to be more relatable and share a little bit more about me, I'm getting ready to give y'all a story time. Now, I had every intention in making this a live. I wasn't sure how that was going to go, so be on the safe side, I decided to just do a recording where I could edit out some things that's going to probably happen during this video. And, things will, be a little bit more smoother. Because, see, I live in an apartment complex, and I just don't know how my neighbors are going to behave today. So let's just go about it in this way. So I'm going to share the story time about how I became pregnant at 14 and a mother at 15. Now, there are some reservations about sharing this story, but again, I want to be relatable to my audience. I want y'all to get to know me a little bit better, and kind of like hear about my journey and life experiences. And what better way than to do that by sharing a little bit of my business. Not all my business, but a little bit of my business. And I just realized that I forgot to turn on my mic. Okay, so I got my mic on and I'm back. Okay, so I was how I'm gonna start this off. It don't really matter how I started off. It's gonna be cringy. So, how did I become pregnant at 14 and a mother by 15? I don't know. I still, those are questions that I still have not really answered myself. But there are lessons that I've learned, and from them lessons that I learned, I really use it day to day in my life with my own children. In the efforts trying to prevent some of the same things that occur with me. And when I look back on my life, I say, okay, so this happened because of this, and I'm glad that this happened because I'm able to use it. And when I approach other things that comes up, on a daily basis with myself or either with one of my kids. So, I have to start off by saying that journey for me, looking back on it, it was one of the most depressing times in my life. Of course, becoming pregnant at 14, I'm still a baby myself. Becoming a mom at 15, I'm still a baby myself. Didn't know what I was getting myself into. Of course, it wasn't intended, but it happened. Of course, my story is one of many. My story, being that my story is one of many, I do have an understanding that it could have been worse. But my story is my story, and my experiences is different from others, and I found my version of worst for me, because when I share my story with other young women, they realize how they had it made, and versus when I hear other women share their stories that's similar to mine, I'm like, girl, I complained about my experience and all what I went through, and mine could have been worse, but still in all, I have a sense of gratitude of coming out of that situation. And it's hard to say, but I have to acknowledge the fact that what was devastating to my family at the time in terms of becoming a teen mom, it turned to be a blessing. My son now, he's 28 years old, and he's a father himself, and he's a loving young man, and still trying to find his way in this world, as we all are still doing. But I couldn't imagine my life without him. I don't want to get all emotional, but I couldn't imagine my life without having my big head. So before I get started, I need to clear up some questions that's probably going to come across your mind. That's normal when when you tend to have like conversations as what I'm sharing today. You tend, you're going to think about like, well, how did that happen? Those questions and stuff, that may come up, and it's normal. We're human, so we're going to have those questions. But I just want to clear it up, or either answer them, because it may not be a few, but I just want to go ahead and get some things out the way. I came from a 2-parent household. I had my mom, I had my stepfather, I had my biological father here and there. He wasn't really prevalent, so I did come from a 2-parent household. Let's get that out the way. And I was not a fast ass. No, I was not hot in the ass. I wasn't, being rebellious, or at least I didn't think I was. My mom was semi-strict, and I listened to my mom. It's just that I made a decision without considering the consequences to be unfavorable. But we have to learn not to prejudge and have certain notions about people before taking the time out to understand, and receive the understanding of why some things happen, because the first thing that comes to mind is when you learn, such as a situation as of mine, of a young lady becoming pregnant so young, they tend to believe, oh, where's the daddy? Well, I had a father figure now that raised me from the age of 8 years old until I left, home. And I had my stepfather again, and then I had my biological father. So I came from a 2-parent household. And again, I was not that teenager that was just running around doing whatever I wanted to do. That was not who I was. So I just wanted to clear those things up. At the time, I had my first boyfriend. My first boyfriend I was allowed to have. Well, now I take that back. To my mom, he was a childhood friend. I've known my son's father since the age of 8. We followed each other from 3rd grade, elementary, middle school, and all the way up to high school. He was a year older than me. And he was my first boyfriend. And my mom knew who he was, because she knew that he was a childhood friend from the time in elementary school all the way up to high school. We stayed in the neighborhood, and then we kind of like moved away from the neighborhood where we first met. And it was like we'll see each other no matter what school I went to. He ended up there. I don't, but to my mom, he was just a childhood friend who had a crush on me or whatever. And he just was a childhood friend that ended up becoming my first boyfriend. Now, in my household, talks about sex were not had. I was born in 1979. Okay, and in the 80s and in the 90s, having those talks with your children about having sex, it just wasn't had. It was just a thing not to do. And I believe, now that I'm older, I believe that the reason why was because I think that most parents believe that that's how they protected their children. Just don't have a discussion about it. And boy, were they wrong. But she didn't, my mom didn't have those talks with me. Now, there were 3 things that I was told not to do. I was told not to have sex. And if I did have sex, I better not come home with a baby. And number 3, I was told not to drop out of high school. And all 3 of those things happened. Yeah. Fail. All of those not to do's, they actually happened. And like I was explaining, not having those discussions was just a part of upbringing. A lot of discussions in my households was not being discussed as, it just, discussions like that just was not a part of the household. We did not have those discussions. It was a way of protecting us, shielding myself and my brother from what could happen. It was just a way of protecting us by not bringing up the subject when it should have been brought up. Taken from that, that's what I do. I have these conversations with my children all the time. We have conversations in different scenarios about different things, topics, things that may even come up on, the news or social media, or just things that's experienced that my kids come and talk to me about that may not even be something that they experienced firsthand, but it could be something of a friend of theirs or whatever. We have these conversations, and it's a must-have conversations that I have with my kids. And I encourage you all to do the same thing with your children. Now, I will say my stepfather did notice some things with me, once I entered into high school, that he thought that it was time to bring up certain topics to me. And he tried to have those conversations. And I believe that he think that he should have just kind of like pushed, back off a little bit and leave certain things to my mom. And yeah, they just was not on the same page with a lot of stuff. But I love my stepfather so much. I don't know where me and my brother would be had he not come along in our lives. And I will always, be indebted to my stepfather. So it happened. I became pregnant. I hid my pregnancy for 7 months. I count 7 months, yeah. It was the most depressing time of my life. Oh my God. Having to walk around and not... Let me back up something. I became pregnant, I think the third time that I had intercourse. And the moment I knew something was going on, I immediately, the first person I told was my son's father, who was my boyfriend at the time. And he took it as a joke because he didn't think that, that he and I were children, and we didn't think of the consequences, and you don't think that it'll happen. But when I explained it to him, he was like, it was a joke to him, and it was like, Kenya, I don't think that you're pregnant, because we did use protection. And what I have learned, what I did know at the time from sex education courses in school, the differences in your body. I noticed that first thing that took place was my menstruation, the monthly menstruation stopped. And by month 2, that's when I said something's going on, something's wrong. I was eating, sleeping, always tired, irritated at the mere sight of my little brother. The enlargement of the breast, and I was like, oh, something's going on. And when we had a discussion, when I notified my son's father about what was going on, what was taking place with my body and stuff like that, we still were just holding on to hope that it wasn't a reality. We were just hoping, like, you know what? When I tell you, we were just hoping, like, this is probably just a scare. And I could not go to my mom because I knew her reaction was not going to be good. It just wasn't. I was just afraid of what was going to happen, because I knew that I was going to disappoint my family totally. And we made a decision to just keep it hush. Now, one other person did know other than he and I at the time, and it was my childhood friend. She knew, and she did not share. Now, I don't know, maybe then I believe that she didn't tell anybody, but she probably did. But looking back on it, I don't believe that she told anybody. So it was 3 people. It was myself and the father of my son and my childhood friend. And every time something new would come up with anything, I will let them both know what was going on. And it was scary and depressing. At the end of the 9th grade years, when I got pregnant, when I became pregnant, and it was over the summer, as we was watching the progression of what was taking place with me. And then entering into the 10th grade year is when things begin to like really show up, like really just show up, like, hey girl, over the summer you really grown, you know. It was like really, I became really endowed, you know, if you know what I'm talking about. And people were asking questions, you know, and of course I was denying all those questions that they was asking. They were asking those questions like, girl, are you pregnant? Are you expecting a child? And I remember a teacher she directly asked me a question. She pulled me to the side after class and she asked, are you expecting a baby? And I told her, no ma'am. And she just let me go on like, okay, you know. But anyway, we held that secret until the moment that my son's father, little sister, told her mom. And I say little sister, she's my age, she's just a year under him. She told her mom that I was expecting, because at some point I believe that he told her. And I remember her she asked me during class one time, because she and I was in the same grade, and she asked me if I was pregnant, and I went on and I confirmed it with her that I was pregnant. And I remember her asking me every day, like, what are y'all going to do? Y'all have to say something. And I don't know what we were intending to do. I just know that I wasn't going to say nothing. And I didn't even consider how bad it can get. I just know, all thing that could play back in my mind was what was going to take place with me once my mom found out. And I was willing to just go ahead and ride this on out. And looking back on it, I remember when she told her mom in turn called my mom, and that's how my mother found out. And I remember we were so pissed about the fact that she told, but she did the correct thing. She did the correct thing. My mom found out, and oh my God, her reaction was, in fact, the reaction I knew that she was going to have. You would have thought it was a funeral. And to her, she did look upon it as a death. And that was the death of my future to her. Like, you threw your life away. You ruined your life. And that was all that. Camera died, but anyway, I'm back. Where I was. When my mom found out, she viewed it as a death, and to her it was a death of my future. I was not going to have no future because now I'm a teen mom. And I remember just having this looming feeling like of a dark cloud just came over my life. I could actually feel my self-worth withering away, and also just the disappointment that I brought up on my mom. It was so hurtful to me of what I've done. Like, what you have done to this family was all that I could remember her saying. And I just remember the hurt and the look up on my mom's face, and she didn't talk to me for days. She was trying to process it, and I could only imagine. And she and I never had the discussion about her feelings. I just know that she just told me, how could I have done this to her? And I'm throwing away my life. But I just remember one evening during about, it was like a week that she didn't speak to me. I remember maybe 2 days after she knew that I was pregnant, I remember coming out of the shower one evening, and I remember her just staring at the TV, like just having this blank stare. She wasn't watching TV, she was just staring at the TV. And I believe I understood how she was going to react, but it really hit me hard of how hurt she was. And I was really asking myself, like, I wonder what is going through her mind at that time. Like, it was just a stare into the TV. She wasn't even watching the program that was on TV. She wasn't paying attention. It was just like she was just looking into the TV, trying to figure out whatever she was trying to figure out. But I have to say that I'm really thankful I'm grateful to my stepfather and my mom, because they did take on a financial burden of a new child that came into the family. They came together and gathered around me. My stepfather said that we was going to get you through this. My mom didn't really have nothing much to say, because as a mom, I can only imagine that she probably in some way or another fought herself. And she never came to me. She and I never had the discussion about that. I was just fussed at and reminded at every opportunity of how disappointed she was and what I did to my life. But in her actions, financially taking on the burden and the responsibility of my son, getting me to my doctor's appointments within the last 2 months of carrying this child that they had no earthly idea that was on its way, and the short amount of time that they had to prepare for this child that was coming. And I had to be content with those actions, and knowing that my mom, and all of that, she forgiven me for what had taken place, but I never heard those words. And I had to learn to cope with the fact that apparently she did forgive you, Kenya, because she took on her responsibility to you as a mother to see to that you get your prenatal care and see to her grandson getting here in the most healthy way possible. And I used to always question it, but I had to come to terms with that, trying to understand that she did show you that she forgiven you and she loved you. Even though she fussed about it at every time and every opportunity presented itself, I knew my mom forgiving me. She loved me. Because when that boy got here, it was like a prince being born into the family. But I remember after my mom, I'm going back and forth, y'all, but after my mom finding out, she was angry with me for about a week, didn't talk to me for about a week. So it was a Friday that my mom actually found out. And I went and stayed with an aunt of mine, just to kind of get a clear head over the weekend, just to have like some comfort and just to calm things down, just to get me out the environment. My auntie, who I love so much, she wanted me to come stay with her and my uncle for that weekend, just until things blow over. And so it was that Sunday night I went back home, and that Monday morning I had to go to school. And to this day I still don't know how it got out that my mom, because the school rumors were floating around that I was expecting a child, but it wasn't confirmed. It got confirmed when my mom found out, and then returning back to school on that Monday in class. Oh my God, it was horrible. And to this day, I think I have an inkling on knowing how the rumor really got confirmed, but I'm not going to discuss that here. But it was the questions coming at me. So you are pregnant. Your mama put you out? Oh, so you're pregnant for so-and-so? What are y'all going to do with the baby? Are you going to have a, the A word, and just asking all these questions. And oh my God, I can't even explain about the guys. The guys were so disrespectful. And we have to keep in mind, we were in school, we were young, we were children, but some of those guys had minds of, their hormones was raging, but they had minds of older men. And they were so disrespectful. And once they learned that in any type of way, there's evidence that you are sexually active, they get so disrespectful. And I remember my son's father having to stand up for me plenty of times, to defend me, and, just the mere fact that, that, hey, chill out, with all those, being disrespectful. And when I look back on that, I was not fortified to deal with that. And I remember wanting to leave school. I just didn't want to return to school because I knew what I was going to have to face. It was stressful. It was so stressful. And we know high school can be a harsh time for kids. And it was a harsh time for me, being that I was pregnant. It was just an adversity that I was not equipped to deal with. I remember wanting to ask my mom, can I leave this school? And I knew that she was not going to allow that. I knew that she probably was going to be like, no, you're going to have to deal with the consequences of your actions. You're not going to run away from this. Because I believe that they wanted this to be a learning lesson for me. And it was. It really was. But I just remember returning to school that Monday that I was told to keep my business to myself. But it was, how can you keep your business to yourself when your business is already out? And I couldn't deny anything. It was right there. There was already speculation. So I hated my life at that time. I wanted to leave that school. I didn't have an option. I had to remain there until I had my baby. There was no solution to protect my well-being or to mitigate further disruption of my psyche. It just wasn't. I knew that leaving that school was not an option for me. I just I didn't see a way out of it. Just going to school, having to sit in class, hearing the whispers. And I'm not that type of person. I'm not confrontational. And I didn't know how to stand up for myself then. I just didn't. And again, I had the support of my family. I had the support of my family more than other girls had, because they had girls in school with me that were pregnant. They had some girls that were living in group homes that was pregnant because their mothers and their families disowned them. And I remember looking at some of the situations and compared it to mine, and I was grateful for my situation, but then there were other situations that seemed better than mine. So it was just a hard time. And I remember also that there wasn't discussions with me about what I wanted to do. No discussions. A decision was made on my behalf, and then I have to understand that it was too far along to even make a decision. Not saying that had I had early enough time to make the decision about terminating, I would have, because I don't believe that I would not have. But it was just decisions were made for me, and I know why they were made, but it just I wasn't included in the discussions. My mom was having discussions with others that was not of her, within her household, and honestly believe that because she didn't really know how to deal with it. She didn't know. She needed somebody to help her. She needed advice, but you were talking to other people, and that's how I was looking at it. Like, Mama, you talking to other folks about me, your daughter that's pregnant, and you're not including me in the conversation. But I believe that it probably was like, girl, you made your decision already, and so you're gonna sit in this one and deal with your actions and your consequences. You're gonna deal with it. And I'm gonna bring back this point again. It just was not something to do back then. You didn't have those conversations. If you were a child, you just do what you're told, regardless of what's going on. The decision is going to be made on your behalf, and you don't have no type of oddly thought or either a word to offer. You just do what you're told, and that is it. It was always like that in the household that I lived in. And there's a lot of things that goes on that we include everybody else on the outside in our personal lives when you have your own decisions to be made within yourself. Going back, touching on the disappointment element of everything, of what I needed from my mom, and I believe I didn't get it from her. I just wanted to know that she still cared, and what I needed, I was able to get from my family members. I found solace and comfort in my grandmother. I found understanding from my aunt, the aunt who I went to live with the night my mom found out that I was pregnant. It was understanding from her. And she was able to voice my feelings for me. She was able to put words together that I couldn't put together. It was understanding. I found courage in another aunt. It was like she just at the front line, ready to go to war for me. And I found spiritual strength from another aunt. And all of that, because I come from a line of strong women, and the community of the strong women that I come from it was how I got through that. Even though I look back and I question, how did I get through all of that? I know how I got through that. It was the women in my family who got me through it. And still was saying all of that, what I got from my grandmother and 3 of my aunts, I really wanted it from my own mom. So I gave birth. January 23, 1995, I gave birth to a 5-pound baby. He was 23 inches long. I remember those labor pains like it was yesterday. 4:30 in the morning, I remember I went into labor, and by 6:11 a.m. my son was here. And it was like awaiting a debut for a prince. He's my prince. He's still my prince. But I'm talking about not just within my family, but it was like my family and his dad's family. But I'm talking about friends and classmates and teachers from school, people in the neighborhood. I'm talking about all of that. Like, it was like they were just waiting. It was just, the talks about this little 14-year-old girl that was pregnant. And it was embarrassing and stressful and just a horrible time in my life that I got through. And even though it was all of that, I'm so grateful for it. It birthed a lot of my characteristics and my attributes today that I have. It birthed a lot of my principles for my life and things that I value. What was a challenge for me in my life, in turn became an actual blessing. And I'm going to close it out right now because this can go on and on and on to the point where it's never ending. So I'm going to stop it right there. And this is only the beginning of what's to come. I'm going to probably start doing story times on Sundays, and I probably will make it alive. And I'm gonna make it a series probably about motherhood as a teen, because there are so many more detours I can take in this story and elements I can add to it, and it would never end. So I'm going to end it now, and I hope that you're able to, for those that could relate to my story, and for those that can understand what I'm sharing about being hard, dealing with rumors, at school, in the high school, dealing with people, and how cruel and life can be for a teen. We have to keep in mind, some people don't have that understanding that just because children are children, teens are teens, they have it hard also. Probably not as hard as adults to some, but they have their moments also. They have hard times and things and stressful situations that they go through. But I thank God that I was able to get through it with the help of my family, and the strong foundation that my family have in the church, and and my faith in God and their faith in God. I'm just so thankful that I was able to get through it. But that's it for now. Please make sure that you share, like, and subscribe, and share a relatable comment or just something that you want to share to what I shared today. And that is going to be it for right now. And I thank you so much for watching and giving me the time out your day just to hear me blabber on. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.